have the roll call, please?
Barbara Brenner.
Here.
Rud Browne.
Here.
Barry Buchanan.
Here.
Sam Crawford.
Here.
Pete Kremen.
Here.
Ken Mann.
Here.
Carl Weimer.
Here. You stand and join me with the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We had a couple committee of the whole meetings. We had one this afternoon to talk about the discussion of the Council Office 2015-16 budget priorities. We also just came out of an executive session where we had a number of discussions. First, we had a discussion with Civil Deputy Prosecutor and Attorney Liz Gallery regarding federal civil complaint number 2114 CV00590 MJP. And the entire council, minus Councilmember Brenner, who recused herself during a review of this case. The county council members reviewed this matter pursuant to Whatcom County Code 2.56 and affirmatively find the following. The official or employee was acting in a manner in which the county had an interest. The official or employee was acting in the discharge of a duty imposed or authorized by law. The official or employee did act in good faith, and the officers, officials, agents, or employees will have counsel pursuant and consistent with all the provisions of Whatcom County Code Chapter 2.56. We also had a consideration of an appeal of the hearing examiner's decision on file number APL 2013-01, filed by Dan and Traxler, attorney for Robert Wilson, regarding applicant's request for a hardship extension regarding the expiration of the short plat.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we uphold the hearing examiner's decision on that file.
All right, there's a motion to uphold the hearing examiner on that case. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We also had a discussion regarding the potential property acquisition for the flood control zone district.
Mr. Chair, I move that we authorize the county executive acting on behalf of the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors to move forward with and complete acquisition of the property as long as the purchase price of the parcel does not exceed the amount discussed in executive session.
All right, so we have that motion in front of us, acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
That passes 6-1 with Mr. Mann opposed. We had a discussion regarding potential park property acquisition, and we also had a discussion with Senior Deputy Prosecutor Karen Frakes regarding an appeal of the Growth Management Hearings Board case number 12-2-0013. The minutes that we were going to approve that were on the agenda, those have been pulled because there were some inconsistencies with what was online versus what was in the packet. So we'll do those at the next time around. So we're going to move right into our public hearings, and we have 2 public hearings this evening. Oh, and look at that. Nobody wants to speak to either one of them. The first public hearing is an ordinance amending the Whatcom County Code 8.10 solid waste and residential recycling collection. I'm going to open that public hearing. If anybody wants to speak to us about our solid waste, now is your chance. Oh, come on. Garbage is an exciting issue. Mm-hmm. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the public hearing. What's the wishes of the council? Ms. Brenner.
I'll move approval, and I think you have one amendment.
I do. I have questions, I think, for staff. But first, I have to find where we are. 292. When I read through this, Ms. Brenner and I, over the years, have traded being on SWAC and both have a long history in solid waste. And I read through this, and then I talked with Jack Weiss, who used to be the county's recycling coordinator and now is on the city council, and he had ran into the same concern. So my question, 2 questions. One is, there's a removal towards the end of all the reporting requirements. And the concern that I had when that used to be very important for the county to know that information because it shows you how much garbage is being generated versus how much is being recycled. So you kind of know if your recycling rate's going up or down or whether the program is doing good. If we're not getting this information anymore, how are we measuring our program success?
Gary Stoika, Public Works Department. This came from SWAT, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee brought this change up. And the question was that we posed to the Health Department. It's not a requirement that Public Works really needs for their operations, for our operations in terms of the excise tax. It was just for the very reasons you need. And we were told by the Health Department that they normally did not receive the information and never used it, and that all the information they got was information that was reported directly to the state. There are also state reporting requirements, as it's been told to me.
So is it a big deal if we amend this and leave it back in? Because it seems like, I understand the Health Department's involvement, but it used to be that the Public Works Department was the one that ran the waste reduction recycling program. And that's where this information used to be used as a way through our solid waste comp plan to know whether things are getting better or worse.
Not to my knowledge, not according to the solid waste coordinator. Says we didn't use it for any public works purposes.
Well,
So you could leave it in there. That would be fine.
But you're not using it for anything at this point.
Correct.
Well, I guess I'd like to make a friendly amendment that we leave that reporting in there because I think it's could be used at some point if we revisit the solid waste plan and want to start looking at our recycling rate and those types of things. It also may be valuable in the future for, I can't remember where our contracts are, but certainly the City of Bellingham's contract, I think, with SSC comes up in a couple of years, and that information may be of value to them as they renegotiate some of the recycling. So you accept that friendly amendment?
I do, and what I wanted to say was, it was my recollection, I might be wrong, that we could take that out because it was somewhere else, that if somebody wanted to look for it, they could find it somewhere else. But I don't have any problem leaving it.
Right, the information is also provided in a different format to the state.
Right.
And the haulers, who are required to do it, asked that did we need this specific information that in this format that's duplicative but in a different format that the state already requires, and we checked into it with Public Works and Health, and there didn't seem to be a need for it, so they requested that they remove the requirement if we didn't need it. So
I'm accepting.
Accepted.
Yeah.
The other one is on page 301. It's letter C down towards the middle, and what it reads currently, it says rate structures for non-residential and multifamily garbage collection shall be designed to encourage waste reduction and recycling. So it was a way to encourage waste reduction and recycling. I don't think it had a lot of teeth, but it's what it does. And for some reason, the non-residential, which would basically be the commercial stuff, has been deleted. So I was wondering why we weren't going to encourage waste reduction and recycling for commercial.
That was a recommendation that came from the Washington Utilities and Transportation Commission, and the way it was described by them was that recycling, there's no requirement. Recycling is unregulated by the federal government, and
right.
So to many businesses, curbside residential people use the same collection company that their solid waste comes with, but businesses are free to use whoever they want. So they may use one company that they're required to use by their service area for solid waste, but they may very well use a different company for recycling. And so therefore there's no real way to tie those two rates together. By tying the rates together, you could be mixing and matching. And according to the UTC, that is probably not legal.
Okay, so there's no real way to build in an incentive because you can pick and choose whoever you want on the commercial side. Okay, exactly. That sounds fine. Mr. Browne.
So to your point on C, I still don't see any structural reason why you wouldn't require them to encourage waste reduction and recycling for a business. In their rate structure, I agree with you. I don't see why we'd take that out. Unless someone can tell me it's illegal.
Well, I believe the purpose of it was to have the rate structure of your solid waste set up so that it encourages recycling, so that you didn't. In some areas, people charge for recycling and charge for solid waste, and so under this system, curbside recycling, You could have a rate structure that didn't charge you extra for the recycling and built that into your solid waste. But in this case, if your solid waste company is one company and your recycling company is a different company, it's impossible for that solid waste company to incorporate a rate structure that encourages recycling because they don't control recycling.
Okay, but I ran a business in this community that was very recycling centric, and we used SSC for our garbage and our food recycling and other products as well. Certainly, there is post-consumer waste generated inside a business in addition to whatever the business does as part of its business operation. And so we used SSC. SSC, in fact, was our only option for the recycling of food waste, for example, in a business. So I'd be reluctant to remove that. And I also, could you just explain what is the difference between what we were asking for in the data and what they're providing to the state? It's so different that they say they're being asked to make a duplicative.
Well,
effort.
I believe that it was just in a different format, a different reporting schedule. I don't know. I don't have exactly what they need to provide to the state in front of me, but according to the haulers, that they were already providing much of this information, just in a different schedule and a different format.
So in principle, I would be supportive of not asking someone to do the same, to provide the same data in a different format, given that we're only dealing with one or a couple of basic providers, and if they're providing it in a state format, that would be fine. But I'd like to see what that format is before I just said, well, accept it, because I don't know whether it's once every 3 years, for example, if it's, yes, we recycle, full stop, So
we could certainly get that.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got a magic little note from our clerk here saying we need to do my amendment separately. Then we can't do it as a friendly amendment. So
can't be friendly, huh? Okay.
So my proposed amendment was to add back in on page 302 number B1, which is the reporting requirements. And I'm fine at some point in the future if we can find out that what the state's getting is basically the same stuff of taking it out. But until we do, I'd like to leave that in. And I don't even think the state gets information from transfer facilities and disposal facilities. I think they're just in the business of regulating garbage trucks and recycling trucks. But I could be wrong about that. Mr. Mann.
So in your motion, I just noticed that we removed earlier the definition of certified haulers or certificated haulers.
Yeah, but it's just a different name.
I know. So if you're going to have it, so yeah, just in your motion, you might want to replace certificated haulers with
solid waste collection companies.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
It's in there twice.
So that's the motion. Certified haulers are now would be referred to in that section as solid waste collection companies. So it jives with the rest of our definitions. Any other discussion on that amendment? Mr. Kremen.
Point of clarification. When you said you wanted to reinstate B1 on page...
Yeah, it's actually B1 and B2.
B1 and B2 and everything underneath. Correct?
Right, that whole
section.
section.
This section.
Okay, all right.
B, section B.
Section B, yep. All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Now we've got the whole thing in front of us. Any other discussion? Mr. Browne.
Well, back to your point on 81060 subsection C, non-residential, I'd like to see that back in.
What page?
301.
Page 301.
Letter C.
Letter C. Where they've struck out non-residential land, I'd like to see that returned.
Yeah, and to speak to that a little bit, if I can delve back into my solid waste mind a little bit, I think the problem, and I think this is what Gary said, was that rate structures, this is all about rate structures, neither the UTC or the county can regulate rate structures on commercial hauling. So we can't really create an incentive in the rate structures because we have no say. It's a total free market for commercial pickup.
Yeah, but you can't. What you can't do is you can't dictate the structures because there's a risk of price fixing. I'm not sure. I'm not.
That's what this would do. That's what this would.
No, but I mean, this is. If you're not telling them what the price is, you're not telling them what the differential should be.
But
So I'm not sure it's illegal.
Structure.
Yeah, I'm not sure it is either. I know the UTC does not set rates for commercial haulers where they do for residential haulers.
Right.
So it's hard to build a rate structure with an incentive if you don't set the rates.
I mean, do we encourage Comcast, for example, to provide a lower price for low-income families to have internet service?
No, actually,
I don't
do
know
that
how the
in
UTC relates to Comcast. Mr. Crawford.
I guess I'm wondering, Councilmember Browne, in the business I work in, we contract with a garbage service to take our garbage, but we also recycle a lot of other things. You know, we generate tremendous amounts of steel that we send to Z recyclers. We generate tremendous amounts of cardboard that we have recycled. Lumber wrappers are a whole industry in itself. What are you saying that we should regulate in terms of the rates for business, and how would that impact us? I don't quite understand the connection between the rate we're paying for garbage and using that rate to create an incentive for recycling. I don't know how you would do that with our business.
Well, but if you read this here and if the argument is, well, you can't do this because it's not legal under UTC, then why are we saying that rate structures for multi-families can be designed to encourage? I mean,
because UTC sets those rates.
Yeah, that's residential.
Yeah.
And that still is residential waste, which I can see the benefits of encouraging recycling, because, you know, not the normal, but many people are not going to go to the trouble to separate all of their disposables, all their recyclables, and then actually take them to some place. So you create this system of residential recycling in your rate structure that incentivizes it. But why would you do that to a business, or how? I'm still trying to figure out get my mind around how that would impact.
So when I ran my business, we got to zero waste with 140 people. We produced no garbage. We recycled 100% of everything for over a year, and we did that because we had services from SSC for food waste recycling, which was pretty crucial. And then things like post-consumer packaging and so forth. And those were things that you didn't give to an industrial recycler. And an industrial recycler will not take food waste from a business because the volume is simply too small. You need a residential-centric provider to do that. So it was actually someone who's, in the case of food waste, who would probably deal with things like restaurants and so forth. So
I don't know. All I'm trying to say is that most businesses that I'm familiar with generate enough waste that the incentive is there in itself.
Yeah, but it's
to minimize the amount of garbage. So, you know, the less garbage we generate, the less we pay.
Yeah.
And that builds it. And in the meantime, we have this separation of the things I mentioned, the steel and the wood products and all that kind of stuff that get recycled elsewhere. We actually get paid for that stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm still trying to figure out what you're going to do about our one little corner of our waste generation, which is still hauling some amount of, like, we don't have food. Actually, someone composts and they collect all our food waste too, but we still have a certain amount of garbage we generate. It's just garbage that it's not. And I'm trying to figure out how you're going to tell the guy that picks that up how he's going to structure a rate system that's going to somehow encourage us to recycle, because the benefits of recycling are already evident, and it would be impractical almost at this point to not recycle.
So the key to recycling is first of all, you have multi-materials. Even in your business, you'll have steel, you'll have timber, you'll have paper, you'll have food, etc. So it's remembering that there's a multiple waste streams, not a single waste stream typically. And then the question is, do you have someone who can take those multiple waste streams? And in the case of SSC, they were wonderful to work with. They really did bend over backwards to try and find a way to take each of the waste streams. So my whole point is this: is if it's something we want to do with multifamily, why aren't we doing it? Why are we saying no? You don't have to do that with.
We don't have the authority.
And I agree with you. It's something we ought to want to do with businesses. But I remember from my solid waste days that legally there was a line there that no one was setting the rates.
State does that, not us.
I mean, if you're telling me we can't legally do it, I'm done arguing about it. But on principle.
You're right.
I agree with you.
In principle, but yeah.
I think we need to change state law to get there.
Right.
We'll send Rud down there to
All right,
set them straight.
I'll withdraw my
Well,
motion.
I can read the comment we got from UTC when they recommended removing it. They said the UTC is exempted from establishing rates for commercial recycling by the federal government. UTC requires all commercial recyclers to apply and receive a common carrier permit under RCW 8180, but that's it. So
Yeah,
they-
I
they
would still
can't-
argue that doesn't actually bring us in, this doesn't bring us in conflict because we're not establishing the rates. We're just
Well,
asking for a
actually,
differential.
it does. They're exempt.
Well, do you want to make your amendment?
No, I mean, it won't pass anyways.
Okay. All right, so we have the whole thing in front of us. Any more discussion? All those in, let's see, is this a,
Ordinance.
it is an ordinance. I guess we need a roll call.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer.
Yes. All right. Thanks, Gary. Public hearing, the next public hearing is a public hearing to allow an opportunity for citizens to comment on a proposed grant agreement between Whatcom County and the City of Bellingham for the purchase of ballistic armor plates in the amount of $15,201. And no one signed up to speak to this. Is there anybody that wants to speak to us about ballistic armor plates? That seems like something that people. All right.
I want one.
You're going to give it a shot?
I need it.
Is that a pun or?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Straight up. I'm just here to answer any questions you might have. As you know, we've established a very well-trained special response team to respond to increasing threats that are presented by people who are armed, and we're finding them carrying more powerful type rifles and more penetrating type ammunition. So this is a grant opportunity we've had to enhance the protection we afford our deputies that are assigned to the team.
All right. Let's see if there's any other public that wants to speak to that, and then we'll see if there's any questions. Any other public that wants to speak to ballistic armor plates? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Are there any questions for the sheriff? Mr. Crawford.
Well, I was going to move approval.
Okay.
And I did want to mention that I asked Mr. Parks today if he would get us a sample that we could have show and tell. But he checked, and I don't believe we have any. He did not believe we had any, and that's why we're buying them. So he said it's something you insert into the vest up front or something like that.
So first I have to get a vest.
Any other questions or discussion?
Armor.
Let's see. We've got the motion to move approval. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to our regular business. The first thing is of the open session. This is where anybody in the audience can come up and talk to us for whatever they like to, other than certain coal, port, or multifaceted terminals at Cherry Point. You each get 3 minutes, and at 30 seconds you'll get a warning from the clerk that your time is about up. When you come up to the microphone, if your name is more complicated than Smith or Johnson, please spell your last name for us. Anybody want to speak at open session? Come on down.
We got
I'm coming down.
Anybody that wants to race, Pat, the race is
Wow.
on.
looking good.
Pacing himself.
Oh yeah, he's doing great.
Patrick Allison, 4825 Alderson Road, Birch Bay. You know, when I was a kid, my mother would tell me, when you choose one thing, you're really choosing not to have another. And I use this at school with my kids. You choose to do this, you're not going to. The trouble is, you have to have two choices. And really, if somebody just gives you one choice, do you really have a choice?
Yeah.
I don't know. Soon, and I don't know, maybe it was today, you had a choice of property for a park. I don't know which park it was or which property, but there is another choice at Birch Bay if you're talking about Birch Bay. Oh, you don't know about that choice.
Yeah.
It's 11 acres. It's not too far from Bay Rim condominiums. It consists of part of the spit that's out there, around 400 feet of the spit, and a genuine beach. around 400 feet of Terrell Terrell Creek. The county owns, I don't know, an acre or so over here. By the time you put it to 600, you might be 600 or 700 feet of choice beach at Birch Bay. I'd offer $2.3 million. I think they may take $2.3 million. I don't think they'll counter. I think they'll say, where do we sign? Now, some people think this spot is not in the center of Birch Bay. You know, when I go to Google Earth and I say Birch Bay, Washington, it brings me down to a red dot. I don't know what that red dot means, but it's not very far from that piece of property. That piece of property is actually north of that red dot. If that dot means Google figures it's central Birch Bay, you'd have a park that's at central Birch Bay that would be beneficial to the whole county, not to just Birch Bay. My deal is the county doesn't owe Birch Bay anything.
30 seconds, please.
It doesn't owe Birch Bay anything. You go by tax arrangement. Yes, you want to protect the road, Birch Bay Drive, I understand that. The berm will help there. But if you're looking at parks and you're only looking at one park, you don't really have a choice, do you? Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public that wants to speak during the open session? All right, I'm going to close the open session. We're going to move on to our regular business. First, the consent agenda from Finance.
Yes, Mr. Chair, the Council Finance Administrative Services Committee met today, considered items 1 through 9 on the consent agenda. They were all voted on unanimously, 3-0, and I would so move the entire consent agenda.
All right, so the whole consent agenda is in front of us. Items 1 through 9. Any discussion about pulling any items? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Other items from Finance.
Yeah, we did the ordinance amending Ordinance 2012-50, establishing the Birch Bay Drive and Pedestrian Facility Project Fund and establishing a project-based budget for the Birch Bay Drive and Pedestrian Facility Project. We considered that, voted 3-0 to recommend approval, and I would so move.
Okay, the motion's in front of us. Any discussion? Seeing none, I guess we're ready for the roll call.
Rud Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes,
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
that passes unanimously.
Next ordinance amends Ordinance 2014-13, Amendment Number 1, establishing the Telecommunications System Replacement Fund and related capital budget appropriation. It was considered and voted on 3-0 to recommend approval, and I would so move.
All right, that motion's in front of us. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready for the roll call.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes,
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Yes.
that passes unanimously.
Next item is ordinance amending Ordinance 2008-25, Amendment Number 5, Project Budget 2, which established the initial East Whatcom Regional Resource Center project budget. This item for, I think it was a $40,000 increase, something like that, was considered and recommended for approval 3-0, and I would so move.
All right, we have that motion in front of us. Any questions? Discussion? Seeing none, we're ready.
I'll just say for the record that there was concern expressed to me that I got an answer today when someone saw that this was coming out of the EDI fund, and it was clarified that that project was entirely funded by EDI development money, and therefore this, well, I'm sorry, the county's portion was funded by EDI money, and therefore it was appropriate, since this is part of the ongoing initial construction, these are just contract extensions to deal with still issues that stem out of the initial construction, that it made sense to use the EDI fund for that.
All right. Any other discussion? So we're ready for the roll call.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes,
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Next item was the ordinance amending the 2014 Whatcom County budget 12th request in the amount of $2,312,053. We considered this item and voted 3-0 to recommend approval, and I would so move.
All right, that motion's in front of us. Any questions or discussion?
This is a myriad of projects and programs, and most of it's grant funded, but I won't go into all of them right now because they're too lengthy to list off unless somebody wants to hear it all over again.
All right, we are ready for the roll call.
Pete Kremen,
Yes.
Ken Mann,
Yes.
Carl Weimer,
Yes.
Barbara Brenner,
Yes.
Rud Browne,
Yes.
Barry Buchanan,
Yes.
Sam Crawford,
Yes.
That passes unanimously.
Next item was a resolution in the matter of the sale of surplus property and setting of a date for public hearing pursuant to Whatcom County Code 1.0. This was considered, recommended for approval 3-0, and I would so move. And I'll just mention that the list of items are on pages 36 and 37 of our packet. So if you're in the market, well, if we approve this, if you're in the market for a good used motorcycle or pickup truck, we got them.
All right, motion's in front of us. Any discussion? Ms. Brenner?
Just that in the future, I would definitely like to see a little more description to some of them, especially some of them that didn't have the mileage on them. I'm not going to hold it up for that, but I would really appreciate it. I've asked for it before, so it's not like this is something new.
I will vouch for that. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously.
Can I just make a point? I think some of the devices you're talking about that don't have a mileage on them probably don't have a odometer anyway.
Well, some of them were vehicles. There was.
No, but a mower doesn't have a odometer. So. That's true.
All right. Next item.
Did we vote on that? Okay, we passed that.
Yeah, we did.
All right, next, last item was approval for the county exec to award bid 1431 and enter into a contract between the county and the low bidder, Jansen Inc., for the Lower Canyon Creek Phase 2 Schedule B restoration project in the amount of $888,963.29. The committee considered this, voted 3-0 to recommend approval, and I would so move.
All right, we have that motion in front of us, acting as the Whatcom County Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors. Mr. Mann.
I'm just going to vote against this and say why is because I'm not a huge fan of this project. I'm sure we're doing a great job and the work will be great, but I don't think this is a great use of county funds to spend this much money on just a few properties that were built in a very obvious flood and landslide area, and I think there's better uses for our money on this.
Mr. Mann, you'll be happy to know that in committee today I made a very weak attempt at trying to explain that you would be opposed to this, and we did take that under consideration.
Well, I want the tens of people assembled here to know why I'm voting against it.
The tens of people. Ooh,
All right, any other discussion?
maybe 15.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, sorry. That would be
After that big buildup, we wanted to make so
aye.
that passes 6-1 with Mr. Mann opposed.
And Mr. Chair, to clarify that, we were voting as the Flood Control Zone District Board of Supervisors.
Yep, I think I got that in there.
I don't know if we should accept the no vote given the delay.
All right, how about from Public Works?
We had a resolution approving the Lake Whatcom Water and Sewer District's 2014 Comprehensive Sewer System Plan Update. And that passed in committee with a recommendation 3-0. And it had already had the approval from the Health Department and Public Works.
All right, so that motion's in front of us. I did have a couple questions about that, and I called and talked to the Health Department about it, and I just like to put my questions in the record. Basically, it said in that plan that their policy was to require people on septic systems around the lake to hook up to sewer. And I wanted to make sure that by us approving that plan, we weren't saying that that was our policy too.
Well,
And they also had a long discussion in there about financing for work dealing with the TMDL on Lake Whatcom, and I just wanted to make sure by us approving the plan, we weren't going along with their financing ideas because they're a little bit different than where the county's at this point. So, and the health department assured me that by approving the plan, we are not endorsing their policies. So, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're on to a council appointments to boards. A nomination and appointment to fill a vacancy on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee representing a public interest group, applicant Mark Peterson. Is there a nomination?
So nominated.
Mr. Browne has nominated Mr. Peterson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Welcome to the SWAC, Mr. Peterson. There's a request for confirmation of the county executive's appointment of Eleanor Hines to the Whatcom County Marine Resource Committee.
I'll move approval.
All right. There's a motion to confirm Ms. Hines. Any discussion?
Oh, confirm, yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We're on to introduction items. We have 4 introduction items. Any discussion of any of those items? Mr. Browne.
So I'm not quite sure of the process here, but I disagree with item number 1. I guess it's going to come up for a vote if it is introduced. But I still maintain that before we even consider this, we should be following the council process and including asking the recipients if they will make the 30% contribution to the project as is normal and customary as defined in the code.
So are you asking to pull that one from introduction, or?
I would like to see it pulled until we've had a discussion with them about whether the landowner is willing to contribute to the cost of this project.
Okay, let's pull number 1 at this point and look at number 2, 3, and 4. Any other discussions on items 2, 3, and 4? All those in favor of introducing those 3 items, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those pass unanimously. Now back to number 1, which Mr. Browne has asked to be pulled while we have that discussion with the proponent. Any discussion? Mr. Mann.
As you all know, I argued vigorously against funding this, but I am in favor of introducing it because I am very interested in a public hearing on this one. I'm very curious about what people think about this decision, so I'm going to support introducing it.
Ms. Brenner.
I'm going to support it too, and I do support the resolution. This isn't about a popularity contest here. We already appointed a water advisory committee, or what do we call it? Flood control advisory committee. Too many advisory committees, and it's so hard to get people to commit to doing this kind of work. And we got a majority of the members who said they wanted to upgrade the where this goes in line, and that they wanted to see it done. And as was brought up at several of our meetings and their meetings, if we had done this years ago, we would be paying pennies on the dollar of what we're paying now. And the longer we wait, the more expensive it's going to get. And I personally happen to see this as I understand it for the agricultural community, but I also think it's a huge burden on salmon habitat to see what's going on in that place where it's, hitting right into the bank. So there.
Mr. Browne.
So I know the salmon habitat issue has been brought up by Ms. Brenner several times, but I have not received anything from anyone in the salmon habitat business that supports that statement, so I'm not sure. And I certainly would invite anybody to submit that as public comment if this thing gets introduced. As far as the comment about supporting the people that we've appointed to these boards and committees, our expectation is always that they follow the guidelines and the code in their decision making. And this decision is outside of the criteria in the code, and I don't believe in supporting a decision that is contrary to what the code says they should be making the decision based on.
Ms. Brenner.
Well, the code is also very clear that we do have the authority to, for other reasons, to prioritize things, which is what we did. And as for, you every time I bring it up, you keep saying, well, I haven't heard from anybody. Why don't you go ask some of the experts? I mean, all you got to do is stand out there and look how dirty, muddy that water is from what's going into the river there. I can't imagine that that's not impeding salmon habitat. And I don't think you have to be an expert to see that if you're out there.
So I formally make an invitation to those in this room and who are watching this. If you are in the salmon habitat related business, please bring that testimony if we have a public hearing to support that, because I have not heard anything to support that.
Ms. Brenner.
Well, I'm not expecting you to support it, but I also think if you feel that strongly about it, you should go hunt experts down instead of come to us. We are your great noble leaders.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm getting tired of this.
Done with the back and forth here?
If I just may respond, Ms. Brenner, I'm only bringing this one up because you're presenting it as evidence that we need to do this, and so if you wish to present that as evidence, I'd like to see the evidence from those that are qualified in the field.
Okay, I want to stop this back and forth. I think we have the motion in front of us. I'm going to...
He got the first word and the last word.
Yep,
That's good.
And now we're done. I'm going to support introducing this evening for the same reason as Mr. Mann. I missed the council meeting where this got brought forward. I probably would have voted against it at the time, but I'm very interested in hearing what the public has to say. So I'm going to support introducing it this evening. Any other discussion other than the one we've already had?
Over and
So
over.
drawn out.
All right.
No, I want to chime in on that discussion. The term I think you're looking for, Councilmember Brenner, is turbidity caused by the and I think what Mr. Browne is asking for is if there is some evidence that turbidity caused at this level in the Nooksack River is affecting salmon habitat. He's interested in finding out about that, and that's a fairly reasonable request. So dig into it and try to find out. Okay, he can go do it. You can
That's
go do
what
it.
I said.
And we'll see who shows up to talk about it.
All right.
All right. All those in favor of introducing item number 1, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that passes unanimously. We're on to committee reports, other items, and council member updates. Ms. Brenner.
Would you want to do it in order, or can I just...
We'll
Okay.
go in any order
Okay.
we want.
Well, I'll do a little business part first. I'm showing this because I hope everybody will read it. We got a packet, and it is big. It's from Thurston Zender, and it's Bob Carmichael in particular, making some comments with a lot of backed up information. If you just read the first 12 pages, you will understand that the joint board does not have the authority to authorize, the joint board of the Weimer process does not have the authority to authorize and expend money without it having had come to the county council through the executive before it even goes to the joint board for council review and approval. And I keep bringing it up, and I don't feel like anybody's paid much attention. Bob Carmichael is one of the best attorneys, not just in Whatcom County, but anywhere. And he was actually our attorney for years, and he's been in private practice, and he works for all kinds of organizations from the left to the right, environmental to business, and he did an amazing job backing up his statements. So I hope people will at least read it.
Mr. Crawford.
Yeah, I think it was at one of our committee meetings today. We asked the executive about this. He's reviewing it with the county prosecuting attorney, and he does intend on discussing this with the council at a future date. So we will get feedback from the administration on this.
Well, my comment is I would like to make sure council members read it
Yep,
before we
I
get
already did.
feedback.
We've already
Okay,
looked at it.
that was my only. And then the other thing was there were two things. Well, there are more than two things, but two things I wanted to report on that I went to. One was it was called the VIP luncheon for the airport and the waterfront plans. And I think Councilmember Mann, you were there. It was amazing. I mean, I haven't been following the waterfront as much as I probably should have, but the port and the organization of businesses that put this on did an incredibly thorough presentation of what's happening at the waterfront, what's going to happen, how long they think it's going to take, and I thought it was amazing. Maybe they should come and make that presentation. The port should, maybe to the council. I thought it was great. And the airport, I mean, you know, I drop my husband off every other week, pick him up every other week. I am shocked at what's going on at that airport. If you haven't been in there and thoroughly gone behind the scenes, you wouldn't believe. I mean, we're not just little Whatcom County and Bellingham anymore. I really am amazed at all the modern technology in that airport. And we got to go behind the scenes where the public can't even go, and it was amazing. So there, and then I went on the Woods tour, which they have one every year. The forestry community, the Women in Timber, put it on, and every year it's something new and different. And this year was no exception. This was a really good focus on geology, on different parts of the county that we hadn't really looked at before in the forestry community way. And this was one of those, I think, that a lot of people who don't understand the forestry community and may have concerns would have those concerns really placated, and they'd feel much better about what the forest community is doing when it comes to the environment. It was very amazing, so kudos on that too.
Any other committee reports? Mr. Browne?
No, sorry.
Mr. Buchanan?
Yeah, just very briefly, thank you, Mr. Chair. This morning we had, as part of the Natural Resources Committee meeting, we had a presentation by Public Works staff and PDS on a follow-up on our April presentation by geologist McShane about the hazards of landslides in Whatcom County. And we got some information about how we can bolster public information through three different options for us to kind of take a look at and consider in the future. So it was a very good presentation. It was a great follow-up to what we did in April.
All right. Ms. Brenner?
If you're going to keep having those kind of presentations, the two geologist professors at Western, they would be wonderful as a follow-up on what happened. And I did talk to John Thompson afterwards, and he works with them. And they've even got a blog or a website or something about geological hazards, and I can send that to you, but it would be really nice to follow up maybe with them next time.
Okay. Other committee reports? Mr. Crawford?
About a week ago, I think you all know, I received an email from Chair Weimer regarding some communication he'd been having with the executive, and the executive has, and I'll let him explain it a little bit more, but has proposed that he take some time with the full council, or as many council members as are possible, to kind of give us updates on what's happening in the executive's office. Things that he's working on and recent developments on issues and things like that. The reason why Councilmember Weimer asked me about it was, and we discussed this for the whole of 5 seconds today, but the idea was, is it better to try to do that at council meetings? Is it better to try to do that in Finance Committee, which is probably the committee that most of us attend most frequently? If we do it in either of those settings, is it better to do it at the start, at the end, and all that kind of stuff? I will say that in our light discussion about it, given the volume of stuff that we have, and I say this tongue-in-cheek because it's said in a joking way, was, can't he just put it all in a memo and send it to us every week? So with that, Executive Louse, I don't know what precisely your discussion with Chair Weimer was, and you might want to try to explain that here, and then we can kind of have a discussion about what format our communications ongoing with the executive should be in.
Thank you, Councilman Crawford. I was just I had a nice meeting with Chair Weimer a couple of weeks ago, talking about the relationship between the exec's office and the council. We had talked about some different ideas of and different ways of communicating, and I had noticed that the Bellingham City Council allows at the beginning of their evening meetings a mayor's update if needed. It's an opportunity for Mayor Linville to basically explain what's going on in her world since the prior meeting, and of course, if there's nothing to bring up, she passes on that opportunity. And the suggestion was, I made this suggestion to be able to keep the council informed of the major projects that we've got going on and the progress that's being made, that I'd like the opportunity to either do that in a formal way at finance or at the beginning of the council meetings in the evening. And just as a suggestion, I gave a report today at the end of the finance committee meeting. I think that there was, 3, maybe 4 members that were there. It took 2.5, 3 minutes to do it. I'd be more than happy to do it tonight if you want to hear the type of things that I'd like to bring up. But just as a suggestion that I'd be willing to do that, and I think that it would be valuable for us and possibly for the community to hear some of the activities that are going on in the administration. So leave it at that. I do understand that if it goes at the beginning of the council meetings, that it will take form or a vote of the council to insert that in as a part of the process. And to follow up on that, I believe that the format and organization of our meetings is spelled out in the Whatcom County Code. So in thinking about it, if it were in a committee meeting, since that doesn't require a county code change and the hearings and ordinance changes that would require, that might be worth considering just having it in the committee meeting.
Yeah, that's exactly where we went. When I met with Executive Louse, I thought it was a good idea. We've heard from the public a lot about greater transparency, and this would be one way for the executive to get his message out a little bit. We've had our own issues about communications, and it would help that too. So I supported the idea. I think that the key that we need to discuss, and we asked you about finance for that exact reason, so we don't have to change the code, so we could try it in finance for a while, and if it works real well, we could move it to the evening meeting whenever we wanted to, but we'd have to actually do a code change to do that. The key issue that I think we need to talk about is, when we talked about it, we were talking a 5 or 10 minute presentation by the executive. But if he lists 10 things that's gone on and all of a sudden everybody's hands go up, that 10 minutes turns into 45 minutes discussion every meeting. So we'll have to try to figure out, if we want to move forward with this, how not to turn this into 45 minutes, because I don't think that was the intent. Ms. Brenner.
Well, I have an idea. Why don't we have it in finance or committee of the whole during the day, and then you could summarize it in the evening? That would kind of...
Would you care to hear the whole presentation in about a minute and a half here today of what I said at the Finance Committee meeting, to give you a sample of what I'd be bringing forward?
Sure.
All right. I signed the executive order, Whatcom County Executive Order concerning SBB 5173, which is a legislative action that was put into law by the legislature last year, creating 2 unpaid holidays per calendar year for reasons of faith or conscience, or for an organized activity conducted under the auspices of a religious denomination, church, or religious organization. The state passed a law last year that the state and all of its sub-agencies would create the opportunity for these 2 unpaid holidays. I formalized that by executive order into the Whatcom County policies, so that we're following the state on that. Secondly, I signed a purchase and sale agreement for the Vote property, subject to ultimate council approval. But a couple of months ago, council asked to have the administration spend up to $9,000 on an appraisal for that piece of property. I felt that we needed to have a purchase and sale agreement locked in prior to spending county money on the appraisal. I also approved the contract for the appraisal today for $3,200 on that particular piece of property. The State Street property, even from this morning, I got more information on that, is expected to close on June 27th, which would be next week Friday is when that'll close. Administration signed the contract for the dolphin replacement for the Lummi Island Ferry. That's the contract that you approved here in the last couple of weeks. And also the administration finalized all of the reports through the end of May as per the Whatcom County Code that gave me the exemption to sign contracts. And everything moving forward will be forwarded to the council office for them to incorporate into future reports. And that's the report that I have in the last couple of weeks. Obviously, there's been other things that we've been working on, including the jail and the water action plan and so on and so forth. But these are some of the major action items that we completed, and thank you for the opportunity to present that to you this evening.
So there was our sample. Do we want to have that like at the beginning or the end of Finance Committee meetings, or move it to a full council meeting, or do we don't think we need that? Mr. Buchanan.
Well, ultimately, I'd like to see it done in the evening because it's an opportunity for the public, at least at this point, the way we operate. It's the only opportunity for the public at large to get the information that we're disseminating. And I think with a precise summary type of report that Executive Laus just gave, and I know it works very well at the city because I was on the city council and we did those kind of reports at every meeting, and they really are good for the public to hear as well as just the council. So ultimately, I hope that we can do it in the evening.
Did this discussions of the city ever turn into discussions, or was it just a report?
They turned into discussions, but not as much as they were just reports. But once in a while, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Browne.
Yeah, but we're different.
Mr. Buchanan, did they publish the report beforehand?
No.
Okay.
The city did, not when I was there.
Okay. And I'm just wondering whether we want to do that as part of that. So.
Ms. Brenner.
I don't think it would hurt to have it as at the end of finance, and if it's going to be, a little bit longer, we can get our questions out of the way so it can be just a summary in the evening. I think that would be helpful.
The challenge is technically you can only be certain of having the Finance Committee members there, not everybody. And your report covers things other than
it'll be on the agenda. If
if it's on the agenda, I would definitely stick around for that.
We won't know what he's going to say, but it'll be on the agenda.
Still listen.
Mr. Kremen?
I would lean toward trying this out in committee. Tonight is somewhat of an exception, although the summer in general it tends to be a time where we don't have as long meetings as we do at the rest of the year, because sometimes we're here till 1 o'clock in the morning. But I think something that is concise and informative could not only be presented to us in committee, but could be documented in writing and sent out to all county council members and then posted on the website, the county website. And then everyone, whether they watch it on television or whether they're here in person, will have access to that information, and will be an opportunity for the transparency that we're all trying to achieve.
All right. I also support the idea, continue to support the idea, and my preference would be to try it in finance to begin with and see how it goes. And if it's a great deal, move it to the evening meeting, because I agree with you. Hopefully we'll be doing webcasting our committee meetings soon, and then it won't be a problem. Yeah. Any other discussion of that? I don't think we need a motion. I think we can just, finance can just add it to their agenda.
We'll work with the executive and make it work.
Perfect. All right. Any other committee reports? Other items or council member updates? Mr. Browne.
So I went to the East County Regional Center for the event that they held up there, and I'm forever reminded of what a strong sense of community there is up there, and that they really are doing a lot to build that community and build resilience within it, and I just applaud them for their efforts. And the second issue, in the short time I've been here, one of the questions that's come up frequently is the time, or the lack of time, between when people submit their names for consideration for committees and then we vote on them, and members of the public have said that they don't have enough time to see who those people are, and I just wanted to throw out whether we want to put some sort of guardrails around that. So, for example, only accepting applications up until the date that the council packet is published, or something that gives us enough time to review these people, maybe contact their references, because at the moment what's happening is we're getting some of these applications literally the day that we're supposed to vote on them, which doesn't give us any time to do anything with them.
We've never discussed this before.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking. We've had a long discussion of this and landed where we are now, although I think I was in your camp to begin with, that we ought to be able to get the applications so they're in the packet so everybody knows who we're voting on. So I would be glad to revisit that again. It takes another code change, as I recall. Mm-hmm. So if you want to work up a thing, it sounds like there's...
Can you give me... Okay. Yeah, thanks. Is there a sense as to...
I think you guys should vote on it before you...
Yeah, why don't you make that as a motion that the council is going to bring this up as an item and see if there's enough votes to bring it up.
Okay, so I make a motion that we bring this up as a change.
All right, Ms. Brenner.
I'm going to support the motion, but my concern is, because I can see both sides. I don't like last minute stuff, especially something that happened not too long ago. But again, sometimes it's just so hard to get people. I don't think that holding it is going to necessarily have anybody back off their application, but it's just something to consider.
I think worst case is we vote on it the following meeting, and I think if I understand it correctly, the only time that becomes a bit of a problem potentially is on the Planning Commission, because that has to be decided early. Is that correct?
Yeah, but we do that kind of the first meeting of the year, so people ought to have that one figured out. Mr. Mann?
I was just going to recount some of the arguments against this, but I agree with you that the last second applications are not helpful for us doing our review, so I'm going to support it.
All right, so we have that motion to bring that up as an item shortly in front of us. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
So that passes 6-1 with Mr. Crawford opposed. Any other items? Mr. Buchanan, reports? Mr. Mann?
No.
Nothing from me. Actually, there is one from me. I went to a water forum right in this room on Saturday that Mr. Browne facilitated. It was one of the water forums put on by the Rome Grange in Caper. I think that was their third one. It was pretty well attended. I think attendance has dropped off a little bit on those, but still lots of interest in water issues around the county. It was put on. It was another good forum. Ms. Brenner.
Done.
Mr. Kremen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to give a report to the council and everyone here that I attended what they call a fly-in for the National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C. It's a day and a half of intense and a very compressed time frame of meetings with department officials, White House officials, and key leaders of Congress. We got a lot done. As I say, there were 15 county officials that represented about over a third of the population of the United States. And we were very successful in gaining audiences with some very key leaders. Some of the major issues that we were trying to bring forward and to the attention of these key individuals in Washington, D.C., be it the administration or Congress, are very important to counties throughout the United States, not just Whatcom County, of course. And some of the issues that we were emphasizing included a transportation bill. It's very important for counties, and I think the entire country, to get a transportation bill passed so that we can move forward and maintain enhance and increase the capacity of our very important transportation infrastructure, which is very important for us to be economically competitive globally. And it's been a long time since our major interstate infrastructure has been attended to. And unfortunately, in Washington, D.C., as you all know, it's been very difficult and painstaking to move forward on MAP 21, and that's the transportation. That's the acronym for the transportation budget. Also, we impressed upon key leaders about the importance of continuing to maintain tax-exempt status for municipal bonds, because they're talking right now in Washington, D.C. about eliminating that, and that would put a very severe hardship on municipalities and local government in general to generate money for needed infrastructure and facilities. And I'm very concerned, as well as most county officials that are involved in this effort, to maintain this tax-exempt status, because it will have a huge negative impact on the abilities of local government to raise money to, construct and build needed infrastructure and facilities to serve our local communities. And one other issue that I want to bring forward is there's some very changing dynamics in our world of retail trade. Year after year after year, there's a continual increase, significant increase in the amount of commerce that's conducted over the internet. And we are, when I say we, the NACO leaders are trying to impress upon congressional leaders and White House officials, and by this phenomenon that's occurring throughout the nation, it enables certain businesses and industries to circumvent having to pay local and state taxes, and give them, first of all, give them an opportunity not to have to pay these taxes, therefore putting a further burden on local government to generate the revenues needed to serve their citizenry and residents adequately. And it also creates a very unfair playing field for the companies that do, and industries that do invest in local communities with infrastructure, employees, payroll taxes. That money stays in the community. It's reinjected into our local economies. And as I say, this Marketplace Fairness Act, if it's successful, would enable, or at least it would actually not enable companies that don't pay these taxes, then that get an unfair competitive advantage in the marketplace. Would force them to have to at least provide revenues so that we can serve our constituents in a adequate and fair manner, and also would not penalize the companies that do invest in our communities. And so I'm sure that Mr. Browne can relate to that, because after having a business, here in our community, and did employ a lot of people that, with the payroll taxes and the payroll payrolls in general were for the most part re-injected into our local economies, making us a more vibrant and successful economy. So there were other things that we talked about. It was, as I say, a very compressed time frame, but it was time well spent, and I think we made some headway, especially at the White House. I think we caught their ear on several of these issues, and I'm hoping that there will be some serious consideration given to the positions taken by the NACO leadership.
Great, thank you. Mr. Crawford?
Don't have any.
All right, seeing no other business, we are adjourned. Thank you for coming this evening.